Welcome, everyone. This is David Morgan of themorganreport.com. And I'd say a treat for us all. This is Mr. Kent Lewis, who I've known for a few years. And I am going to just make one statement before we start. I want Kent to give some of his background so people that aren't familiar with him know who he is and what he does. But after that, I just want to say that I think we're in kind of a situation where we're getting diversion techniques. What does that mean, David? It means that most of our ilk are worried about what the interest rate system is going to do, when is the Fed going to pivot, and when is the stock market going to go down, how soon are metals prices going up. In the meantime, while we're thinking about all those things and commenting on all those things, we have a whole new financial system coming right to the fore. Kent has gone into this. It's like as soon as November 2022. That's not very far away. Kent, give us a little bit of background and let's dive in.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on. You know, I'm a researcher. I own software companies. We develop platforms, but one of them is a platform called freedom.social. And I'm a researcher, and I like to go out and explore what they call conspiracy theory and connect the dots. And back in 2017, I had discovered that the International Standardization Organization had worked with the National Association of Realtors to create new standards for the blockchain for the National Association of Realtors. And for the last 5 years, this is my sixth report. The new report is called New Worldwide Financial System, going live in November 2022. And what I mean by that is the International Standardization Organization has worked hand in hand with the financial institutions around the world, central banks, to create new standards for the entire financial industry. And what this is going to allow them to do is go live with their central bank digital currencies, but it goes a lot deeper than that because, as usual, they're pulling underhanded, deceiving tactics in which we can go over aspects of the report today, because this is literally going to enslave all the people of all the world.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay.
Sounds like fun. We all want.
Yeah. So, you know, all I do is I go out and I research, and then I start connecting the dots. And so if you don't mind, I'll do a screen share and we'll just kind of
more documentation,
go over the report for the audience.
Sure.
Okay. So like I said, this is part one. New Worldwide Financial System goes live November 2022. And it's called ISO 20022. And David, when I say ISO, I'm referring to ISO 20022. And what this does is it's a single standardization approach, methodology, process, repository to be used by all financial institutions in initiatives worldwide. And this impacts the following business areas: payments, securities, trade services, cards, and FX. So the entire worldwide financial system. And this is a screenshot from the ISO website. And as you can see, the SWIFT system goes live November 2022. Now, David, initially, nobody's going to notice anything. Nothing's going to change because basically this is replacing the SWIFT system. This is an international standard, just a standard. And so when you make a payment, you know, initially, you know, online or at the food store, you're not going to notice anything. And any questions thus far?
No, not yet.
Okay. So SWIFT plays a large role, and they're kind of facilitating help the transition over to the new standards. And there are currently about 7 so-called decentralized cryptocurrencies integrated with ISO. There's a list of them here.
Let's name them all. Let's read them off.
Sure. It's Stellar, Hashgraph, IOTA, Zinfin, Ripple, which we could have expected,
Right.
Algorand, and Quant. And I would speculate, I'm not giving financial advice, but if they're involved within the new worldwide financial system, I could expect the potential of them rising in price in the future.
And I will stop you there for a minute, Kent, just to ask a couple of questions. So
Sure.
It looks like those that you outlined and named are basically transfer payment type of cryptos. We don't see Bitcoin there. We don't see Ethereum there. I think the most familiar with most people is XRP, which is the banker's crypto, basically, for transfer payments. And what you said at the beginning about the SWIFT system going all the way through even foreign exchange. So it is, from what you've shown us so far, touches everything financial. And now they've only integrated, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks to me like those that we've outlined here are basically for transfer payment. Is that correct?
Except for Hashgraph, that's more of a digital ledger technology. That's it's different, it's faster. But I'm sure that some of the central banks in the future will be using this for larger transaction volumes potentially.
Okay.
So, now when we go to the store, we go put gas in our car, everything is tracked on a supply blockchain, on a supply database. In the future, when we make payments, everything will be tracked on supply blockchains. So everything will be tracked and recorded forever.
Okay, so let me stop you there.
Now
Let me stop you there.
Okay.
So right now, I'm going to be the devil's advocate, and I'm pretending to be a millennial, right? So I've grown up basically, tracked and traced, and big data is the big word. Data is the new, oil well, supposedly. So what's the big deal? Going from collecting myself on the big data, and now it's more efficient to put it on a blockchain. Why should I be concerned?
Well, I've got a section here coming up on the next couple pages that indicates that the currency is now.
Wait. I'm sorry if I got ahead of the game.
Oh, that's okay. But the simple answer for now is the currency is programmable.
Okay.
And as I'll explain here in a minute, what that means to Mr. Millennial or anybody else that says, well, what's the big deal? And it allows them to go from the current financial system over to digital currency, central bank digital currencies.
Okay.
So, and then I get into Biden's executive order, and which I'll explain here more in a minute about. I want to, this is 35 pages, so I want to kind of get through the highlights and get down to, connecting the dots where the interesting parts of the particular report. And then I get into what's called FedNow instant payments, which debuts in between May and July of 2023. Now, what I found interesting about FedNow is it's being billed as a domestic pay anybody instantly. Well, we've got that now in PayPal and Zelle. And but to go back to Biden's executive order, there's one thing that I did want to mention at the very end of it. This is how much I included on the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, in the Boston Fed, and Project Hamilton. Now, they released 2 prototypes of a hypothetical, quote unquote, central bank digital currency. One of them had DLT, or blockchain, and which they, quote, said was not useful. And the other one was centralized, and they said it was a lot more efficient, but it had security issues. And not once did they ever mention ISO, the new standard. Okay. And so I only provided basically one sentence on Project Hamilton. Okay. And so that's what was have been advertised to be coming up with recommendations for the new hypothetical central bank digital currency dollar. And so getting back into FedNow, it is, keep in mind, Project Hamilton never mentioned ISO, but FedNow is integrated with ISO. Okay. And it does launch in between May and July of 2023. And now I hit the jackpot because, in all my different reports, I did mention them in one of my reports, but I did not remember them. And this just absolutely blew started to connect all the dots. So Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, let's call them DTC, is building the first prototype to support digital U.S. currency. They don't mention the dollar in the clearing and settlement. The keywords process is part of the digital dollar project. And then I started digging a little bit more. And DTCC subsidiaries, remember that word, subsidiaries, processed securities and transactions valued at nearly 2.4 quadrillion. Its depository provides custody and asset servicing for securities issued from 177 countries. Then I started digging some more. And who is DTCC? They are the shareholders of all the world's central banks. And so now keep in mind, they are doing the keywords, they are doing clearing and settlement. Okay. And so let's now connect the dots. Who is DTCC? Shareholders of the world's central banks. Who's the digital dollar project? Contractors for shareholders of the world's central banks. Okay. Biden's executive orders on the CBDC both sets the timeline and sets the course of action for regulatory agencies to create legislation for a digital currency. Project Hamilton is misdirection. Look here, not at DTC and the Digital Dollar Project. Project Hamilton's two pilots released are not integrated with ISO, and ISO is not even mentioned. MIT said DLT was not a good match. So let's further connect the dots. FedNow is integrated with ISO. DTC's lithium project will support the clearing and settlement of the FedNow U.S. digital currency. They're not even mentioning the dollar. The DLT, or blockchain platform, and market infrastructure for making the U.S. currency a CBDC. FedNow, at this point, I'm saying, is the new U.S. digital currency and future CBDC. But let me add a couple more things that I added to this, and that's what, this is for Mr. Millennial or anybody out there going, well, what's the problem with using a digital currency? Because over 80% of all of our transactions we do now are already with the debit card or PayPal or whatever. Okay. Well, it means that they have the ability to shut off your money. It means that you'll have absolutely zero privacy. It means geographic spending limits. So if they were to come out with another scamdemic and they don't want you going 3 miles from your home, you get 4 miles and your debit card doesn't work. They will restrict the amount of money that you can save. There'll be expiration dates. They will limit the amount of a CBDC an end user could hold. And this is their words. Digital assets must mitigate, and this is from Biden's executive order. It says that digital assets must mitigate climate change and pollution and promote financial inclusion and equity. And it means negative interest rates. So if you look at all of Europe and Japan, they've been in negative interest rates for years. It means real-time monetary policy effects on inflation. It means automatic tax collection, automatic collection of government fines, tickets, and child support, student loans, etc. It means carbon credits for travel will be tracked and controlled by the FWF and Rabobank. And MasterCard came out with a specific card, which is issued through Rabobank, in which tracks your carbon credits. And so just a couple more here. You'll make payments with your device or a chip in your hand or ID 2020, in which I get into part 2 of this report. The COVID jabbed will be able to make payments with their body. And that's not conspiracy theory. I connect the dots on that, and I use their own wording and their own patents to connect the dots on that. And it means universal basic income will be distributed via CBDC. It means that financial institutions will have the ability to enforce a social credit score, and they'll be able to verify vaccination status. And so this is all stuff, David, that they're doing in China now, and they're actually doing it in the US currently with businesses. With this particular page, I connect the dots over to the current Chinese social credit score that's in place now, which they deny use of their live now CBDC digital yuan. And in this section, I just kind of go over the different environmental social credit scores and provide examples of what they've already done to individuals. And Visa and MasterCard have already announced their use of digital assets using Visa, MasterCard. And they said, quote, "We think that stable coins and CBDCs will coexist in the future, and there will be a number of different approaches to creating products based on that." So I thought that was a pretty big statement.
Interesting. Wow.
This is kind of a bombshell. I guarantee you that 99% of the people that read this will not know that Ukraine, during this so-called war, they're the most advanced digital country in the world since the war began.
Most advanced how? I think you left out a word or two. Most
I just noticed that I jumped ahead in my presentation. Let me kind of put that on the back burner. And I went into universal basic income will be connected to the CBDC. And I made a bold prediction that by 2025, after the CBDC is announced, UBI will take the place of Social Security, Medicare, and all government programs will be paid out via CBDC, and all based on a social credit score, because that's where all this is leading. So I'm kind of going out on a limb there, but that's where they're taking this. And I get into the BRICS in June 22nd, 2022. Putin announced the new BRICS world reserve currency. And I get into a lot of deep details on this particular reserve currency. And this particular document leads back to it's a Russian government website, and it goes into their CBDC and it goes into the new BRICS CBDC world reserve currency, and it will be integrated with ISO. Well, everything has to be integrated with ISO if you're going to participate within the new world financial system.
Yeah, let me stop and bear down on that a little bit. You
Okay.
go back a page so we can just look at it.
Sure.
It's a slam dunk bet to be made that the BRICS world reserve currency will be integrated with ISO 222. Now, here is something that some in our genre will find umbrage with. Why? Because they are in the impression that there is a break out of the system with the BRICS saying, hey, we want to move as far away from the US dollar as we possibly can. And we want, bifurcation. In other words, you guys do what you want with the US dollar. It's going to destroy itself anyway. So we BRICS are getting together and making our own currency. And then some people go as far as to say it's going to be gold backed. And we've got a system here where you've got to, you're either with the BRICS new currency or you are with the dying dollar. But according to the way I read this, and that's what I want it to be explained further, really, it's still the world banking system, and they're all compliant with ISO 222. Did I miss something?
That was a fantastic question. So I actually have an entire paragraph to answer that particular question, because what I wrote was perception is everything. Most of the articles I have read in research indicated that countries and countries' leaders make decisions to create a new world reserve currency. I disagree. The hidden hand behind the central banks makes these decisions. Central banks run the world, and leaders of nations are puppets of the hidden hand. For example, most articles I have read researching this topic all have a similar line that says, analysis, and this is a quote from their articles, analysis analysts believe that BRICS reserve currency is meant to rival the US dollar and the International Monetary Fund's special drawing rights. This statement is pure misdirection to create the perception that the BRICS reserve currency will be separate from the IMF and central banks, when the factual truth is that central banks have planned the downfall of the dollar and Western-dominated financial system for many years in favor of this new financial system based on ISO 20022 and CBDCs and DLT blockchain technology. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and in 1991, the USSR was dissolved. The IMF played a central role in helping Russia manage a transition from a century-planned and market-driven economy with policy advice, technical assistance, and financial support, and they still do today.
Thank you. I think that's imperative in this. Everything here is extremely important. And that's just to emphasize, what I have broadcast, taught, questioned over the years. I said, look, if you think there's really much difference on a global scale, they all are under the central banking system or the global banking system.
Yes.
I don't care. I've said many times, if you're communist, fascist, socialist, democratic republic, monarchy, doesn't matter. As long as you're in their banking system, they're under control. And the second thing that brings that up is the illness situation. Every one of these countries went along with it, except a few that were led by Black leaders that I pay homage to, that stood up and said no, and unfortunately they had early demises.
Absolutely.
So this tells us, with just looking at a very low level, you don't have to be any great analyst to see the obvious. We are under a system that's controlled from the top down, and all of this, they're different than us, BRICS is going to break away, and on, is more theater than anything else. Correct?
Perfectly said, David. It's all theater to create perception of divide. And let's, you could use COVID as an example. You can use Ukraine as an example. I get into that here in a minute in the next page. But on the pages, I go into different articles and where the United States has digitally printed nearly 80% of all US dollars that is in existence today. And I provide a screenshot off of Fred. You know, right here is 2000, here's 2020, and just boom. Okay. And, your audience knows this, your audience is one of the most informed in the world, but anybody else watching, this kind of says it all. However, can we even trust this data?
Yeah, right.
Is this,
I read the report, so I know what's next. I mean,
yeah.
Press on, please.
So this right here, I've known about for a while because I'm a fan of Catherine Austin Fitts.
We both are.
But I really went in and I started research, and my jaw just dropped. I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And so most of your audience knows, but I'm going to repeat it. Catherine Austin Fitts and Professor Mark Skidmore had found 21 trillion missing from DoD and HUD a few years ago. Then you take a gentleman named Anthony, very strong Italian name, Capaccio, that found 94.7 missing on top of the 21 trillion. Well, how is that even possible when we've got, budgets and accounting? And well, here's the answer. SEC Rule 10B-5. And what this means is, according to various national security reporting exemptions, including federal entity national security exemptions that allow the Federal Reserve and all federal entities actually to have two sets of books. So they say, well, because of national security, we're going to spend this $5 trillion here, but we're just not going to put it on the books and we're not going to record it. So that's approximately 114 trillion that we know of. That's just, not on the Fred chart that we just showed.
Right.
Right. So, and then everybody can read the rest of that. It's really fascinating information. And in 2019, I released a report called World Financial System Intentionally Engineered to Collapse in Favor of One World Government with a Cashless Society. And I went into all the different quantitative easing from 2008 through as much data as I could get through 2019. And then I provided all kinds of different examples from 2020, 2021, and 2022 to prove that they have intentionally been digitally printing trillions upon trillions of dollars. And this doesn't count unfunded liabilities, Social Security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Another 200 trillion almost. Anyway, go ahead.
And my point is they have intentionally run the existing worldwide financial system into the ground by design to get to this point, approximately 41 days from where we sit today, so that they can launch this new financial system. And so I get into Vanguard and BlackRock, the holding companies for the central banks. And by 2028, they're going to own the majority of every major company on Earth. They already, between them, manage approximately 20 trillion in assets. And there's many different really good links here. But what I found was interesting is that from BlackRock to Alphabet, they have invested cumulative trillions, but individually hundreds of billions of dollars into blockchain. And I get into how many billions they have invested into blockchain. And Alphabet has invested just, I believe it's last year, 1.5 billion, BlackRock 1.17 billion. And you can just go through the list here. Everybody from Goldman Sachs to PayPal, Microsoft, Wells Fargo, American Express, How much did Chase put in? I know that it's got. Where's Chase? Morgan
Citibank
Stanley.
in the next one, yeah.
Yeah, Morgan Stanley, 110 million.
Citi, 215 million.
Yeah, and then finally, I had prematurely mentioned Ukraine. A lot of people, when people read my Ukraine section, this is from the of this report coming from the new worldwide financial system, and this is more of the. It's other than COVID. This is one of the biggest psyops the world has ever seen. And a lot of people are going to take exception to that. But when you here, David, do you mind if I just kind of cover a few of these things so people understand?
No, this is one of the more interesting parts of the report I didn't expect till I read it.
Yeah. So here, I'm just going to kind of read this. And if you have any questions, please interrupt me. For over a year, researchers on freedom.social have been posting videos of movie sets on the streets of Kiev, complete with directors and people running from buildings. Are there people dying in destruction in Ukraine? Yes. The globalist central bankers who control this world will do whatever it takes, including nuclear war, to implement their new world order slave system and remain in power. However, in our research, Ukraine is a central banker, Hegelian dialectic, and part of an overall worldwide color revolution to implement UN Agenda 21, 2030, and the WEF Great Reset, and that includes their new worldwide blockchain, digital currency, CBDC financial system. The bottom line is Talmudic Khazarian central bankers control the world. They control most every government of the world via their central banks, and they control 100% of the worldwide fake news, mind-controlled mainstream media. Ukraine is an engineered war being sold to the masses with propaganda and an all-out worldwide media blitz to make Ukraine appear to be victims and Russia and Putin the villains. With that said, the central banks control Russia and Russia and Putin are in on this new world order takeover. As the BRICS nations will be the beneficiaries to take over world dominance as decided by the Talmudic Khazarian central bankers. The assessment I have been setting forth within the research platform freedom.social is Ukraine is about A, having the West self-impose sanctions on itself to destroy all Western economies and supply chains and destroy the food supply of Western nations. That has happened. It's done. B, destroy the existing worldwide financial system so that they can implement the worldwide blockchain CBDC financial system and make the BRICS CBDC the new world reserve currency.
I'm going to stop you there, Kent, just for a second.
Okay.
Because I want to clarify with my paid members. I think it was in March, I wrote pretty in-depth look at the start of the war, and pretty much what you just read, I agree with. I think there's, as I said, all wars are bankers' wars. That was my first statement. Second was the quote that the first thing you lose during a war is the truth. And then the last thing I said before I started the editorial was that if you follow the money, you have a more objective way to get to the truth than you would in any other methodology. Bottom line was, I was, let's say, somewhat hopeful that maybe this break was for real, as we discussed a few minutes ago. But I did say, and I want to reemphasize this to the public, that the most likely scenario is what you just read, that Russia, Putin are really in on the whole game. And again, going back to what you said, it's more theater than anything else. I was hopeful that maybe, just maybe, there was some real pushback. But and also from the time I wrote that editorial where I said it could be, but most likely not, it's obvious with more data, more time, it's not. It's a ruse. Go ahead.
It's a ruse. It's more, using their media to create the perception, the perception of this, Putin and Russia are the villains, look how evil they are, and this in my world is just as big as bombshell, is that since this war began, Ukraine has implemented a total digital infrastructure that equates to a total surveillance system, including national digital currency, or CBDC, via legislation, which includes government services, digital IDs, citizens' personal information, banking, and passports have all gone digital. The DIA app was designed by the Ministry of Digital Transformation. The program is similar to a project funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, backed by the ID 2020 Alliance. The DIA app includes personal ID, driver's license, passport, banking information, and biometric data that is accessible within the app. So, David, I got a question for you. If Ukraine was a real war zone, there's no way that they could implement a digital currency and digital payments and a digital financial system and digital IDs with no power or internet. How have they achieved this? Well, they've achieved it via Starlink. The U.S. Taxpayer has paid millions of dollars to send many thousands of Starlink units to Ukraine. Starlink is marketed as a satellite and internet service. In truth, Starlink is intended to be utilized as part of the New World Order blockchain, digital currency, CBDC financial and surveillance system. Starlink will be utilized to collect data from, this is another bombshell, and Starlink will be utilized to collect data from the COVID fake vaccine transhuman victims, is proved within part 2 of this report.
That'll trigger some people, even some of my people, but that's fine. Continue.
I'm sorry to say that because it bothers me too. And I've factually proved that. So, getting the summary and conclusion, FedNow is the new U.S. digital currency, and DTCC Lithium Project Lithium is the back-end settlement and clearing technology. And not until this back-end is connected. See, FedNow is being marketed as this instant now domestic payments platform. But not until they connect this back-end does it make it a CBDC. That's where the misdirection is coming from. Look at this new instant payments. It's not a CBDC. It's just a digital instant payments platform. So this way they don't get any pushback. And then as soon as they connect that back end, it's a CBDC. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're very good at doing things incrementally. I mean, anyone that studied what you and I have, and most people that will be listening to this certainly have a pretty good idea. And they do a lot of what I call trial balloons. They'll push so far, maybe overextend to see what the pushback is, back to the Hegelian dialectic. Okay, we got to back off. But they'll go around, under, through, fly a balloon over. I'm trying to be somewhat humorous here, but they'll get to their goal. They'll just go at it in a different direction. But they're very good about, 2 steps forward, 1 step back if they have to, 2 more steps forward. Oh, went too far, 1 step back. But they're getting there. And so as you said, I think you outlined it perfectly. Oh, it's just another PayPal. It's more convenient and everybody's on it, not just elect to be on it. And then, as you said, after they connect the back end, ho-hum, Bob's your uncle. All of a sudden, you are in a CBDC, whether you want to be or not.
It's kind of like what was that term that they used in COVID? We just need 2 weeks to
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah, there you go.
2 weeks. Yeah.
So it's same exact thing, folks. It's luck here, don't luck here, and then they just take these little bites, and they use their media to create this perception And then most people, depending on what media they subscribe to, they believe what their TV tells them. And that becomes their reality. And it's like, folks, wake up, man. I mean, when you look at what a digital currency, what they're able to do with the programming of the digital currency, unless we find solutions and we implement them now, it's going to become a very interesting world. Then we're going to get into, when I release part 2, we can get into this too, because do you want me to go into any of this right now, David?
I think if it's okay, Ken, I'll stop you there. We'll come back for part 2. I mean, there's a lot to digest of what we went over, and there'll be some pushback. What I'd like you to do now is give our viewers where they can find you, and is there the availability when they do find you for them to download this PDF for themselves? Absolutely.
I will, anybody that wants a copy, you can email me, Kent@freedom.social. That's Kent with a T, Kent @freedom.social. And I'll email you a copy of the report. In fact, David, if I can briefly get into one solution, maybe please. 2, that I think it's critical that we implement now, because if we do, and we can get some type of decent adoption, we do have an opportunity to create our own world while it's still legal. And I think it's imperative. So let me go down. And so just real briefly, ladies and gentlemen, there's not going to be any food. And after one thing that David, that I would like to mention real quick, it's really important, is that 19 days ago, the Pope instructed all Vatican entities to move all funds from the Vatican Bank by September 30th. And to me, and I would think you as well, this is a big telltale sign that anytime after September 30th, that there have the probability of collapsing everything. Nobody knows when, but it could easily happen in October. And I found a sentence in here that said it includes real estate and movable assets and entities. And so this could potentially mean gold and silver assets. It doesn't specifically mention that, but I thought that was important that we kind of tell people, don't keep all your money in cash in the bank, because Mike Adams and others are predicting the collapse and bail-ins in the relatively near future.
Ken, let me stop you there. If you go back to the Vatican Bank, so
you betcha
know what I'm talking about. So we talked about this off air before we did a little bit of prep for this interview. And I think you asked me, anyway, that's how I remember it. But I've been asked by you and others, well, what does this really mean? The answer is, I don't know. What I do know is what happened in a theoretical exchange where the Arabs took all the money out of U.S. banks. Right. That's in a movie called Rollover. And I have talked about that movie for a very long time, especially when I started as a circuit speaker in the basically investment circuit, but primarily precious metals and resource stocks. But I've been to mainstream investment conferences, such as, the Money Show, which is pretty mainstream, and others that are more mainstream. The point being is that in that movie, the Arabs don't trust the US dollar, so they're buying gold. That's discovered by this banker that's doing an audit. And this causes the Arabs to spook. They want out of the dollar, so they sell everything. And in the movie, one of the main traders in one of the New York Fed banks tells the whole trading crew, sell everything. No foreign exchange positions. Buy gold if you can get it, and pray. And in that scenario, basically, the whole system collapses. Now, I am not saying the Vatican Bank taking everything back by September 30th is going to collapse the system. What I am saying is, theoretically, in that movie, it took place. What I am saying is, evaluate what I'm saying and make up your own mind about what vulnerability you have. If you temporarily took a great chunk of your assets, assuming you have some, and moved it into something static, like a bunch of gold coins, outside of the system, and September 30th comes and goes, and I'd certainly wait at least a month or two, and then go back in, you've protected yourself, and yes, it took a little bit of effort. But to go in blindly, I think is a fool's errand. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. Will the outline of rollover take place? No, I don't think it will. What I do think is there will be disruptions, especially when they're so good at obfuscating the obvious. You know, they don't say gold and silver. They didn't say assets. Can you scroll down again? I forget the words they use. But it reminds me of when Warren Buffett bought all that silver. So yeah, movable assets. So what the heck does that mean, right? Well, probably means precious metals. When Warren Buffett bought all that silver, 130 million ounces, in I think it was 98 or 99, on his annual statement, he had to report to his shareholders, silver wasn't ever mentioned. It was miscellaneous, because under the law, anything that's under 2% of the total holdings can be listed as miscellaneous. So these guys are really good at it. And I'm not blaming Buffett. I'm just telling you a fact. Yeah. But so it's a concern. Be as concerned as you want, but people want to know what I think. And that's why I jumped in here and kind of elaborated on it, Kent. And hopefully it's of use to people, because there's no way to predict what this will really mean until after the event. But you can prepare ahead of time in a way that probably isn't going to degrade your financial standing that much. Let's say you buy gold and it's $1,700 an ounce, and 2 months go by and it's down to $1,600 an ounce. But all these bank accounts are in a quandary because there's so many dislocations for who owes what and needs to send it to the Vatican. I mean, this could be a big disruptor. That's all I'm saying. And prepare accordingly. If I'm wrong, so be it. I'll live with my statement.
After writing this report and seeing what's going on with them launching the new financial system in November, I think it's a telegraph. The key question is we don't know when, but like David said, prepare by having food resources. This is one of my new platforms. It's Agorist Marketplace, and you can do bartering. You can pay with gold or silver. It's all peer-to-peer. You can pay with any digital asset that you choose. And this goes live, full live, in about 2 weeks. It is live now. I just haven't launched it yet. I want to make sure that it's scalable. And but I copied all the different food resources from Corey'sDigs.com. I started to research this, and there was a guy by the name of Pete Kennedy over at the Solari Report, and there was no need for me to do this research because he did an amazing job. There's an amazing, unheard of amount of food resources within this particular report. Financial resources. David backs a company called Low Digital Silver and Gold Intelligence. Anybody out there that doesn't know about that? There's a link in this report to David's page on Load. It's important that you perhaps look into this. I have a digital asset called 1776. I have another one called C-Team. Within your email to me, if you send me an email and you request 100 free 1776 or 1,000 free C-Team, I'll send you a link to download the wallet, send me back a payment address, and I'll send you either 100 or 1,000 C-Team. And you can, in the future, you will be able to pay for food when there's no food on localfoods.market. But the last thing that I did want to cover is we're in the process of developing open source technology, which will be a standardization approach and methodology, a payment process. a decentralized payments API, in which if all the freedom-minded people in the world that don't want to be enslaved, if we were all to adopt this universally, like they have done with the standards, okay, just a very simple payments API, we would end what they're doing tomorrow. I could be totally wrong, but it makes sense to me. So I'm going to launch that at Red Pill Expo in October 12th and 13th, I believe, which David and I are both speakers, and I wanted to mention Gio Griffin's Red Pill Expo. So.
All right. Well, Ken, thank you as always. We will get into part 2 at another time.
You bet.
Again, give out your email so people can email you and get this PDF. I think it's a lot to absorb, and you're at the tip of the spear. You're leading things and showing people stuff that I think many of us in the truth movement have not known about. I mean, Ukraine being pretty much digital all the way. The ISO 222, is it?
Yeah.
And how far along we are to basically hooking up a back end that makes this FedNow system into our worst nightmare. So we are, to repeat a little bit, we're only a couple months out according to your work. I mean, we've got September, which is a couple more weeks. We've got all of October, and then some of this starts to be implemented in November. And what's going to happen by the 30th or a couple more weeks with the Vatican Bank remains to be determined. Maybe it's a big nothing burger, or maybe it's something that's very important to the world financial system. Time will tell.
We're not going to notice anything in November. It's just going to be, you're not going to notice a thing. Next May, when they go live with FedNow, I doubt if they're going to get people used to it. David, it's kind of like we used to swipe credit cards, and then we inserted, now we tap, and in the future, the people with the Bluetooth signal walk into the Amazon Go or the Amazon One, give off a Bluetooth signal. They don't even need a device. They walk in, they walk out. That's where this is going. Anybody out there that wants a copy of the report, email me, kent@freedom.social. You're welcome to create an account at Freedom Social. It's a research platform. You're welcome to debate me if you think I'm wrong. I'm pretty receptive. I'm very open-minded. I'm just about finding the truth. And David, thank you for having me on today. I'm very grateful.
Well, always, Ken. Always good to meet more people and deep thinkers and people that really care about others and push back. I mean, there's nothing more precious than freedom. It's priceless. That's why the founding fathers gave up their fortunes as sacred honor, because it meant more than anything else. And that's my belief system. So thank you, Ken.